Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. The moment Victor Newman stepped into the dimly lit study at the Newman mansion, there was a shift in the air so sharp and chilling that even the walls seemed to hold their breath, because this was not the Victor who barked orders or issued veiled threats. This was the Victor who had found something final, something devastating, and Nikki felt it deep in her bones before he ever said a word. Before he slammed the leather folder onto the desk with a thunderous crack that echoed through the house like a gunshot, his eyes burning with a fury that was no longer controlled or strategic but raw and personal, the kind of rage that comes when betrayal is no longer a suspicion but a proven fact. And as Nikki slowly turned from the window where she had been staring out at the ground she once believed would always be her sanctuary, she saw it in his face and knew the war they had been dancing around was officially over. Because Victor did not look at her like his wife anymore, he looked at her like an enemy who had dared to infiltrate his kingdom, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low and deadly, every word sharpened by the evidence he now possessed, telling her that he knew everything, that the lies, the secret meetings, the whispered phone calls, the hidden files, and the carefully planted manipulations had all been uncovered, that the USB drive she thought was buried, erased, destroyed had resurfaced in his hands thanks to a trail she had been too arrogant to fully cover, and Nikki's breath caught in her throat as he began laying it all out with ruthless precision, naming names, dates, locations, and motives, revealing that he knew she had been feeding information to Jack Abbott, that she had quietly backed legal maneuvers meant to weaken Newman Enterprises, that she had positioned herself not as Victor's partner but as his silent executioner, waiting for the right moment to strike. And as Nikki tried to interrupt, tried to explain, tried to insist she did it to protect the family, Victor cut her off with a glare so fierce it froze her in place, accusing her of rewriting history to soothe her conscience, declaring that loyalty does not come with conditions, that love does not operate in secret alliances, and that the moment she chose to work against him, she forfeited every right she believed she had earned over decades of marriage. And Nikki's voice cracked as she reminded him of everything they had survived together, the betrayals, the addictions, the illnesses, the enemies, the countless times she had stood by him when the world wanted him destroyed, but Victor laughed, a cold, humorless sound that sliced through her defense like a blade, telling her that surviving together did not give her permission to stab him in the back, that shared history did not excuse calculated treachery, and that the evidence didn't lie, because there it was in black and white. Digital footprints and recorded conversations that proved she hadn't just doubted him, she had actively worked to dismantle him, and when Nikki's eyes filled with tears and she whispered that she had been afraid of what he was becoming, afraid of the ruthless man willing to crush anyone in his path, Victor stepped closer, towering over her, and asked her with devastating calm whether she thought she had the right to decide when he crossed a line, whether she believed herself morally superior enough to betray him while still sleeping in his bed and living under his roof. And as Nikki tried to argue that she had been protecting their children, Victor struck the desk again, shouting that his children were strong because of him, not in spite of him, and that she had insulted him not only as a husband but as a father, and in that moment the mansion itself seemed to turn against Nikki, every portrait of Victor staring down at her like silent judges, every echo of laughter from years past now twisted into a reminder of what she was about to lose, and when Victor finally said the words, "Get out of here," they landed with more force than any threat he had ever issued, because there was no hesitation, no negotiation, no room for reconciliation, just a final command delivered by a man who had reached the point of no return, and Nikki stood there stunned, asking if he truly meant it, if he was really throwing her out of the home they built together, and Victor answered without missing a beat that this was his house, his empire, and that she no longer belonged in either, that she would not sleep another night under his roof, that she would not pretend to be his wife while secretly aligning herself with his enemies, and as Nikki gathered herself and demanded to know if he intended to destroy her the way he destroyed everyone else who crossed him, Victor responded that she had already destroyed herself the moment she chose deception over honesty, and as she walked upstairs to pack, the weight of the moment pressed down on her chest like a crushing force, because every step through the halls felt like walking through a mausoleum of memories, the rooms where they had celebrated victories, mourned losses, forgiven the unforgivable, all now tainted by the knowledge that she was leaving not by choice but by exile, and when she returned with a single suitcase, refusing to take anything else, Victor stood by the door like a sentry, unyielding, watching as she hesitated, hoping against all logic that he might soften, that he might reach for her, that decades of love might outweigh the evidence in his hand, but Victor remained stone-faced, and as Nikki finally looked at him one last time and asked if this was truly how their story ended, Victor replied that she had written the ending herself, and the door closed behind her with a finality that echoed through the mansion like a death knell, leaving Victor alone with his fury and his victory, while Nikki stood on the cold driveway realizing that the war she thought she was fighting to save herself had just cost her everything. Because Victor Newman does not forgive betrayal, he eradicates it, and from this moment forward, nothing between them would ever be the same again. Jack reels over Nikki's bold move. Victoria fears the worst. Jack Abbott will reel over Nikki Newman's bold move while Victoria Newman fears the worst when it comes to her parents' marriage. After hearing from Nikki and Kyle Abbott, Claire Newman will make a pit stop at the Newman ranch to inquire about Victor Newman's side of the story. Victor will defend his feud with Jack and basically argue that Claire doesn't know the real Jack. After Victor changes the subject to Holden Novak, he'll object to Holden's bad reputation and push Claire to steer clear of him. Victor won't think Claire should be tangled up with the Abbotts either since he won't want her caught in the storm that's brewing. At Society, Nikki will give Victoria some stunning news. Victoria will be taken aback over Nikki going as far as threatening to leave Victor over his latest attack on Jack. Victoria's fear deepens as she realizes this isn't just another argument or temporary standoff, this is a battle of wills with consequences that could permanently alter her family. Later, when Victoria meets up with Claire, the two women compare notes, their shared concern binding them in quiet anxiety as they both acknowledge the terrifying possibility that Victor and Nikki's marriage may not survive this latest fracture. Claire admits Victor seemed unreachable, consumed by suspicion and fury, while Victoria confesses she's never seen her parents so fundamentally opposed, each unwilling to bend. The realization hangs heavy between them, love may not be enough this time. Across town at the Abbott mansion, the mood is no less complicated, as Kyle Abbott stands near the Christmas tree, staring at a wrapped present that suddenly feels heavier than it should. The gift, something he bought for Claire before everything unraveled, now represents uncertainty, regret, and unresolved emotion. Although Kyle and Claire have been on better terms lately, the wounds between them remain tender, especially after Claire accused him of manipulation, of disguising control as kindness. That accusation still stings, and Kyle is determined not to repeat the cycle, not to give her anything that could be misinterpreted as pressure or expectation. As he debates whether to tuck the gift away forever, he wrestles with the suffocating limbo he's been trapped in, the sense that his relationship with Claire is neither alive nor dead, just painfully suspended in between. Claire's recent embrace of her wild side in LA, her emotional distance since returning, only reinforces Kyle's fear that maybe the healthiest choice is to let go completely, to accept that a clean break might be kinder than clinging to hope. Jack notices his son's turmoil and offers quiet support, reminding Kyle that uncertainty doesn't mean failure, but before the moment can fully settle, Billy Abbott strides in with news that immediately shifts the family's focus. Phyllis Summers has made a bold demand. Billy reveals that Phyllis wants the Abbotts to sign over Marchetti to Summer Newman in exchange for her help, and while the proposal is outrageous on the surface, Jack can't ignore the strategic implications. If surrendering Marchetti could secure Phyllis's assistance in stealing Victor's precious AI program, it might be a sacrifice worth considering, especially with Victor tightening his grip on power. Jack's wheels begin to turn, but before he can voice a decision, his phone buzzes with a text from Nikki, igniting a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she's already managed to get her hands on the AI program herself. That hope propels Jack to Society, where Nikki lays everything bare, confessing that she threatened to leave Victor if he didn't hand over the AI, a line she never thought she'd cross but felt forced into after watching Victor escalate his attacks without remorse. Jack is visibly shaken, stunned that Nikki would risk her marriage to protect him, and he struggles to reconcile gratitude with guilt as Nikki insists this was about drawing a line, about refusing to stand by while Victor weaponized his power against those she cares about. She makes it clear that enough is enough. Victor's reign of intimidation cannot continue unchecked, not at the cost of her integrity or her peace. Back at the Newman ranch, Victor sits alone, a drink in hand, the weight of his choices pressing down as the silence around him grows louder. For the first time, the possibility that Nikki might actually walk away feels real, and though Victor would never admit it aloud, the thought unsettles him deeply. Pride wars with regret as he replays their confrontation, questioning whether his need to crush Jack Abbott has blinded him to what truly matters. Yet even in this vulnerable moment, Victor's instinct is to harden rather than soften, to double down rather than retreat, convinced that backing down now would mean losing everything he's built. The irony is cruel, his obsession with control may be the very thing costing him his marriage. Back at the Abbott mansion, Billy notices Claire's present tucked beneath the tree and zeroes in on Kyle, gently but persistently probing about where things stand with her. Kyle deflects at first, changing the subject, unwilling to unpack emotions he hasn't fully sorted through himself, but the conversation gradually shifts into something deeper as he and Billy bond over shared struggles and hard-earned growth. Billy, who's been stepping up for the family and working to rebuild his life, offers perspective without judgment, reminding Kyle that uncertainty doesn't define him and that sometimes the bravest move is allowing space, even when it hurts. As the brothers talk, the present remains where it is, a silent symbol of unresolved feelings and the fragile hope that maybe, somewhere amid the chaos, clarity will eventually come. And across Genoa City, as alliances shift, ultimatums are drawn, and hearts hang in the balance, one truth becomes impossible to ignore: Nikki's bold move has changed everything. Jack is still reeling from its impact, and Victoria's fear may be justified, because the storm Victor warned everyone about isn't coming, it's already here. The storm continues to churn long after the initial shockwaves, and in its wake, every character finds themselves grappling with consequences that refuse to stay contained, because Nikki Newman's ultimatum has done more than rattle Jack Abbott or terrify Victoria. It has cracked open long-suppressed truths and forced everyone to confront how far loyalty, love, and vengeance can truly stretch. As Jack leaves society after his intense exchange with Nikki, his mind races with conflicting emotions, gratitude tangled with a gnawing sense of responsibility, because while he never asked Nikki to put her marriage on the line, he can't deny that her willingness to do so changes the entire battlefield. Jack has spent decades sparring with Victor Newman, trading power plays and moral jabs, but this time feels different, heavier, because Victor's war is no longer confined to corporate chess moves, it's bleeding into marriages, families, and fragile alliances. Jack begins to question whether winning is worth the cost if it means becoming the catalyst for Nikki's heartbreak, yet the thought of Victor controlling the AI program, using it as a weapon to crush the Abbotts, hardens Jack's resolve even as doubt gnaws at his conscience. He knows Victor too well to believe this ends cleanly, and if Nikki failed to secure the AI, then the fallout is only beginning. At the Newman ranch, Victor's solitude grows oppressive, the clink of ice in his glass echoing like an accusation as memories of his life with Nikki resurface uninvited, moments of passion, betrayal, reconciliation, and enduring love that has weathered storms far worse than this, or so he's always believed. Yet this time, Nikki's defiance cuts deeper because it isn't fueled by jealousy or misunderstanding, it's driven by principle, by her refusal to stand by while he systematically dismantles Jack Abbott out of sheer obsession. Victor tells himself that Nikki will come back, that she always does, but a sliver of doubt pierces his certainty, because he saw something in her eyes this time: finality, exhaustion, a woman who has reached her limit. Still, Victor's pride won't allow him to chase her, and instead he doubles down on his belief that Jack is the true villain, the puppet master pulling strings behind a mask of decency. In Victor's mind, surrendering the AI program would be tantamount to admitting defeat, and that is something he cannot, will not do, even if it costs him everything. Meanwhile, Victoria Newman struggles to maintain her composure as she moves through her day, the weight of her parents' conflict pressing on her chest with every step. She spent her life mediating, rationalizing, and absorbing the shockwaves of Victor and Nikki's tumultuous marriage, but this time feels more dangerous because neither parent seems willing to compromise. Victoria replays Nikki's words over and over: "He showed me the door," and the phrase sends a chill through her, because it suggests a Victor who is not just angry but resolute, a man prepared to let his marriage collapse rather than relinquish control. When Victoria later reconnects with Claire, their conversation grows heavier, both women acknowledging that Victor's warnings about storms and fallout may be as much a prophecy as a threat. Claire admits she feels pulled in opposing directions, wanting to believe Victor has her best interests at heart while sensing that his fear-driven worldview is isolating him from everyone who cares about him. Victoria, ever the strategist, begins quietly contemplating contingency plans, not just for Newman Enterprises, but for her family, because if Nikki really does walk away, the repercussions will extend far beyond heartbreak. Back at the Abbott mansion, the emotional undercurrents remain just as turbulent, though masked by quieter moments and unspoken fears. Kyle continues to circle the unresolved question of Claire, his gaze drifting repeatedly toward the wrapped present as if it might offer answers it cannot provide. Billy's earlier words linger with him, reminding Kyle that growth often means resisting the urge to fix everything immediately, yet Kyle can't shake the feeling that time is slipping through his fingers. He wonders whether holding on to the gift is an act of hope or cowardice, whether giving it to Claire would reopen wounds or finally clear the air. Jack notices his son's distraction but chooses not to press, recognizing that Kyle's struggle mirrors his own in many ways, both men caught between fighting for what they believe in and letting go for the greater good. The tension escalates when Billy circles back to Phyllis's demand, voicing concerns that signing over Marchetti could permanently alter the Abbott legacy. Jack listens carefully, torn between protecting the family's future and securing a decisive advantage against Victor. He knows Phyllis is dangerous when cornered, unpredictable yet fiercely loyal to Summer, and the idea of handing her such leverage is risky at best. Still, the AI program remains the ultimate prize, the one piece capable of leveling the playing field, and Jack can't ignore the possibility that Nikki's gamble may have failed, leaving them with limited options. As the brothers debate, the atmosphere thickens with urgency, each man aware that time is not on their side. Elsewhere, Nikki finds herself alone with her thoughts after leaving Jack, the adrenaline of her confrontation with Victor slowly giving way to exhaustion. She questions whether she's been reckless or brave, whether threatening to leave Victor was an act of desperation or long overdue self-respect. Memories of her life with Victor flood back, the power, the passion, the countless reconciliations that followed betrayals on both sides, and for the first time, Nikki wonders if those cycles have finally run their course. She doesn't regret standing up for Jack so much as she regrets that it came to this, that Victor's hatred has eclipsed the man she once believed would always choose love over pride. Nikki steels herself for what comes next, knowing Victor won't forgive easily and that reconciliation, if it happens at all, will require a surrender he's never been willing to make. As night falls, Genoa City seems to hold its breath, every household brimming with tension and unanswered questions. At the Newman ranch, Victor pours another drink, his thoughts spiraling as he considers his next move, torn between launching a renewed offensive against Jack and grappling with the very real possibility that Nikki may not come home. He tells himself that strength lies in unwavering resolve, yet a quiet voice inside him whispers that stubbornness could be his undoing. At the Abbott mansion, Jack stares out the window, reflecting on decades of rivalry with Victor and wondering if this battle has finally crossed a line neither of them can retreat from. Kyle retreats to his room, gift in hand, still undecided, his heart heavy with the realization that love, like war, often leaves casualties no one anticipates. By the following day, the ripple effects intensify, with whispers spreading through both families and beyond, speculation mounting about Nikki's threat and what it could mean for the future of the Newmans. Victoria fields questions she can't answer, her professional facade strained as she balances corporate responsibilities with personal turmoil. Claire remains on edge, replaying Victor's warnings about Holden and the Abbotts, increasingly aware that her own choices could entangle her deeper in a conflict she never sought. And somewhere amid it all, Phyllis watches and waits, calculating her next move, fully aware that chaos creates opportunity and that the Abbotts' desperation may soon work in her favor. As the lines harden and emotions fray, one truth becomes painfully clear: Nikki's bold stand has ignited a chain reaction that cannot be undone. Jack is no longer merely reeling, he's preparing for a fight that may demand sacrifices he never wanted to make. Victoria's fear deepens with every passing hour, her intuition screaming that this time, the damage could be permanent. Victor, isolated yet unyielding, stands at a crossroads where power and love collide, and whichever path he chooses will redefine his legacy. And Kyle, caught between hope and heartbreak, faces the possibility that letting go may be the only way forward, even if it means surrendering a future he once believed was inevitable. In Genoa City, the storm continues to rage, relationships are tested to their limits, and the question looming over everyone remains unanswered: when the dust finally settles, who will still be standing?